Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, today we are opening a case file that completely blurs the line between historical true crime and the supernatural. We're going to unravel a terrifying narrative. It starts with a gruesome modern-day discovery and tracks all the way back to a blood-soaked secret society. If you appreciate a structured, analytical look at chilling mysteries, well, you're absolutely in the right place. We'll map out every dark corner of this story on screen. So dim the lights, lock those doors, and let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. The story we're dissecting today centers around a string of absolutely horrifying headless murders. But as we parse through the facts, the big question we really have to ask ourselves is this. Are we looking at a conventional crime, a supernatural horror story, or a deeply disturbing black magic ritual? It's a really complex web, and to untangle it, we need to go back to exactly where the nightmare first began. Part 1, The Royal Crescent Mystery. So our timeline begins with a 26-year-old woman named Rupa. She had just started a brand new job doing housekeeping at the Royal Crescent Hotel over in Kolkata. And you guys, the setting itself is absolutely crucial to the vibe of this case. We're not talking about a bright, shiny modern building. This is a heritage structure straight out of the British era. Picture this: long, dark corridors, creaking old wooden staircases, and these massive, imposing paintings that just seem to stare down at you. Rupa had only been working there a few days when her totally ordinary night shift turned into a living nightmare. Right, so while doing her rounds on the second floor, Rupa hears something coming from inside the honeymoon suite. It's this strange, heavy, dragging sound. She knocks, calls out room service, but there's no answer. Now, according to the hotel's super meticulous logs, this room is supposed to be completely empty, no guests at all. Driven by protocol and honestly, probably a good bit of unease, Rupa swipes her keycard, pushes open that heavy door, and steps inside. What she finds is literally the inciting incident of our entire case file. Right in the middle of the bedroom, there's a lifeless body suspended in midair. Its hands and feet are tightly bound to the four corner posts of the bed. But the most horrifying detail, the one that makes Rupa absolutely scream and wake up the whole hotel, is that the body is missing its head. The neck is cleanly severed, blood is actively dripping onto the floor, and the corpse is just swaying there, kind of like a broken pendulum. It's a scene of pure, visceral horror. The cops are called immediately, but believe it or not, this is just the beginning. Section 2, Hauntings and Hidden Clues. As you'd expect, Rupa is completely traumatized by what she saw, and her psychological state really starts to fracture. That very same night, back in her staff quarters, she jolts awake. She checks the time, and it is exactly 3 a.m., which, is widely known in folklore as the witching hour. From the hallway outside, she hears that exact same sound, that heavy, dragging noise from the honeymoon suite. It creeps closer and stops right outside her door. Then come 3 distinct, loud knocks. Tuck. 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 Now, what's really interesting about this part of the explainer is how the auditory scares suddenly escalate into visual ones. Rupa looks down at the gap under her door, right? And she sees a pair of feet standing there. But they're completely wrong. The feet are pointing backwards. It's as if the person standing there is facing away from the door, but pressed right up against it. Paralyzed by fear, she just watches those twisted feet slowly drag back into the darkness. She reports the whole thing the next morning, but management just waves it off as a trauma-induced hallucination. Just get some rest, they say. But as we're about to see, the evidence shows she wasn't hallucinating at all. Just 2 days later, this present-day horror directly slams into physical evidence from the past. While she's cleaning out a dusty old storage room, Rupa uncovers this bizarre wooden box. The outside is etched with these highly disturbing symbols. A circle containing an eye, completely surrounded by handprints. Inside, incredibly old black and white photographs. They show people dressed in black, wearing these grotesque masks. And right in the center of the group is a woman, suspended in midair, bound by her hands and feet, completely headless. Rupa realizes right then and there, she's not losing her mind. The murder she witnessed is a carbon copy of something very, very old. She takes this straight to the police. Moving to Section 3, the 1931 Secret Society. Prompted by Rupa's photos, the police start digging and uncover a massive secret built right into the hotel's architecture. They find a sealed basement from the British era that literally hadn't been opened since 1941. When authorities finally bust down the door, they find a perfectly preserved nightmare. The walls are covered in those exact same eye and handprint symbols. In the center is a stone altar completely surrounded by human bones. Forensics actually test these bones and date them back 70 to 80 years. So looking at the timeline, it maps perfectly. Back in 1931, a secret society of wealthy elites forms a cult. 10 years later, the basement is sealed up. Decades roll by until Rupa opens that wooden box and seemingly awakens the whole cycle once again. Along with all those bones, the police also find a decaying old diary sitting right on the altar, and it basically explains everything. Remember those creepy photographs Rupa found? Well, the word written on the back of them was Arpan. Arpan translates to a ritualistic sacrifice. So this wasn't just a random murder, this was a highly organized, lethal religious rite practiced by those elites back in 1931. So the crucial point is really understanding the mechanics of these crimes. The diary breaks down their modus operandi, their MO, step by step. Let's look at this. First, a female victim is selected. Second, her limbs are tied to the four corners of a bed. Third, she gets suspended in midair. And fourth, the decapitation. This exact sequence is exactly what Rupa walked in on in the honeymoon suite. The cult's ancient ritual was actively being recreated in the modern day. But the diary held one last incredibly chilling detail right on its final page. It was a warning that read, "Until the final sacrifice is complete, they will keep returning." This single line changes everything. It shifts the whole narrative from just a historical investigation into a ticking clock for the present day. The ritual isn't over. And Rupa, well, she knows way too much. Which brings us to Section 4, the final sacrifice. At this point, Rupa is terrified, obviously. She decides she is going to quit her job and bolt from the hotel the second the sun comes up. But she never actually makes it to morning. Walking down the long corridor back to her room that night, she feels this heavy presence. She pushes open the door to her quarters and just freezes. Standing inside her room are 5 figures. 5 of them. And they're dressed in the exact same black clothes and masks from those 1931 photographs. But worse, in their hands, every single one of them is holding a rotten, severed head. Screaming for her life, Rupa spins around and sprints down the empty hotel corridors. She's completely alone. She manages to find an empty room, dives inside, and locks the heavy door behind her. Panting, terrified, she grabs her phone and dials the police, begging them to hurry. Dispatch sends units immediately. But as Rupa hangs up the phone, this horrifying realization washes over her. She looks around the room. In her blind panic, the room she locked herself into was the honeymoon suite, the exact spot where that first murder took place. She didn't escape the trap, guys. She locked herself right inside it. The police arrive at the hotel, sirens blaring, but it's too late. They find the door to the honeymoon suite locked from the inside. When they finally break it down, the room is dead silent. Right in the center, suspended in midair and tied to the bedposts, is Rupa's headless body. Smeared on the wall in fresh blood are the words, "Untim Arpan, the final sacrifice." The hotel was permanently sealed shut after that, though locals still whisper that the spirit of a headless woman wanders those dark halls. Section 5, Serial Killers and Cults. Let's move to and see how this builds into the broader picture. If you look at the narrative structure we just unpacked, it leans heavily on tropes of guilt, trauma, and really complex ritualistic murders. This is exactly why we're so captivated by psychological thrillers. On one hand, we have the Royal Crescent cult, steeped in history, full of supernatural elements, and relying on group rituals. On the other hand, we have modern media translating these exact same fears, like in the highly anticipated Z5 series Brown. Starring Charisma Kapoor, Brown takes these dark themes of ritualistic targeting, but drops them into a gritty, modern psychological thriller with a solitary serial killer. The mechanics of the horror are basically identical. It's just the execution that has evolved. And that brings us to our final takeaway for today. Whether you're dissecting a ghost story about a 1930s cult or watching a modern detective hunt down a serial killer in a show like Brown, the core fascination is exactly the same. The ultimate question isn't just who the killer is, but why. What dark, fractured psychology actually drives a human being to methodically plan, execute, and complete such a gruesome ritual? It's that pursuit of the why that keeps us looking, keeps us analyzing, and keeps us coming back to the case file. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, keep your eyes open and keep questioning the shadows.